on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
Unsubs are your friend.
Yeah.
It is like a self-cleaning oven. It is keeping your mailing list in order for you. And actually, it is also an opportunity, because when someone unsubscribes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they hate you.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers. No more barriers. No one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Yes, here we are, the Self-Publishing Show with me, James Blatch.
And me, Mark Dawson.
Me, Mark Dawson. Yeah, we get picked up on me and I quite a lot. And you use it correctly, as the Queen does when she says Philip and me. And then we get 5 emails from people saying, it's Philip and I, it's James and I, but it's not, is it? It's Mark and me.
I'm not getting involved in that. Honestly, if people are sending emails about whether we use me and I correctly, well, I won't swear. We'll let them have their moment.
Well, I'm about to do the Patron shout-out, so we'll get a collection of emails about my lack of understanding of American states in a minute.
That's fair enough.
Anything directed at me is fair enough.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Anything directed at me is off limits, obviously.
Okay, look, let's do the Patron shout-outs before we do anything else. And I've got a couple of things to talk to you about, because it's been a few weeks since we've sat opposite each other virtually like this. But we want to say a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you go to patreon.com/self-publishing show,
Patreon what?
Patreon.
What?
Let me try that again. Patreon.com/self-publishing show. You can sign up to support the podcast. I mean, it's as little as $1 and as much as $3 an episode. And it means a huge amount to us, not least because we're talking about buying new microphones to really add to the upping the ante in production values that we've done recently. And it keeps us going, gives us a buzz every time you support us. So thank you so much for coming on board. And I want to say a huge thank you to, actually it says James Seeley here from Arizona.
Seeley James.
I think it's Seeley James, unless there happens to be a James Seeley who's joining us. But we're going to say, I think that's probably Seeley James. So thank you very much.
If there is a James Seeley, hello James.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
hello, James.
I'm pretty sure it's Seeley. So
You'll
thank
have
you,
to
Seeley.
let us know from Arizona in the United States of America. We're also going to say a huge welcome and thank you to a guest on the podcast, Audrey Huey. So Audrey, thank you so much for becoming a Patreon supporter as well. It means a lot to us. From WV.
Goodness.
Not Wisconsin. West Virginia?
Not Washington.
West Virginia?
No, I have no idea. Which one?
West Virginia.
Oh.
Maybe?
Yes, could be.
Could be West Virginia. From Sarah Williams, thank you very much indeed for joining us as a gold level Patreon supporter. She's from QLDAU, which of course is Queensland, Australia, up there in the beautiful tropics. And to Ben Follows, thank you, Ben, from Ontario in Canada. From Anne Bartolucci, another person we've had on the podcast in the past. Anne was an excellent guest to talk about sleep, if I remember rightly. Is that right? Anne Bartolucci, thank you. From GA, Georgia in the United States. Peter Lakeshore, thank you very much indeed, Peter. We have no addresses for the following. Carl Artman, thank you, Carl. Matt, here we go. Quintana, actually easier than it looks. Miranda Burnett, thank you, Miranda. Andrew McClure, and Christina Knapp, and TR Cameron. You have all joined us this week as Patreon supporters. You've all been to patreon.com/self-publishing show, and we are delighted to have you as part of Team SPS. Here at the Self-Publishing Show. Thank you very much indeed. And if you're a new listener to the show, we get emails every now and again from people who say, I've just discovered you and I'm ploughing through your back catalogue. And that's always good to know. So sorry
about that.
Yes, you should know that you can go back in time through the Self-Publishing Show, which was known as something else at the beginning. If you go to, selfpublishingshow.com will take you to the podcast page and you can see all our podcasts there. Right, well, I'll chat to you about Mr. Dawson. You've been on your travels. You've been to Bali in the Indian Ocean for 20 Books Bali, which was a little bit different from 20 Books Vegas. It's like the rich aunt to Uncle Vegas.
Yeah, it was great. There was, 35 authors there, usually with their partners. So maybe I'm overestimating that a little bit, but it was a fairly small conference, but in a really gorgeous hotel. It was probably the nicest conference I've ever been to, organised by Craig Martell, who you're speaking to tomorrow for the podcast. But yeah, really great. So I did the first session, which was fun, and then there were authors like Kevin J. Anderson was there, who's written some Dune books, some Star Trek, Star Wars, that kind of stuff. So we're going to get him on the podcast, so you can get your geek on with him later on. And who else was there? Plenty of really good authors. Michael Andelay was there, so I had a good long chat with Michael and with Craig, and it was just a really lovely 4 days away. It's a long flight for us, so we a 17-hour flight to get there, and we were there for maybe 4.5 days. We didn't leave the hotel basically, so it was really lovely. A couple of some time off for Lucy and me, Lucy and I. Let's not go there. And with the kids with the grandparents, so it was lovely. We had a really great time.
And in terms of usefulness for you as an author, the Jedi-like state that you are as an author advanced, was it useful?
Yeah, it was. There was some interesting bits and bobs that I gleaned throughout the conference, and is really those things are more about having the opportunity to chat with people that you might, over a slightly longer period of time that you might not otherwise get to have those opportunities. So I had a slightly boozy conversation for a couple of hours with Dan Wood from Draft to Digital, which was, I always love talking to Dan. So that was fun. And as I said, a couple of long chats with Michael Andelay. Michael is coming to London Book Fair, and we're going to have dinner in London just to talk about some things that we might be able to do together. And just generally hang out with the authors, some of whom we've had on the podcast before, and it was fun. I'd definitely do it again, even though I think Craig isn't going to do Bali next year, but he is thinking about doing one in Alaska where he lives.
Wow.
Which I would go to that.
I would love to go to Alaska where he lives.
Northern Lights and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd be well up for that.
Yeah, I might put my name down for that as well. Good. Well, that sounds great. And yes, I'm interviewing Craig tomorrow, 5 a.m. Alaska time. I just did query with him on an email to say, are you certain that's correct? Because, I can shift the time at this end. He goes, nope, that's the best time of day for me. So that's the kind of work ethic that Craig has, which is great. Yeah, and I had lunch this week with Kinga, I want to say Yenetish, but I think everyone pronounces her name Kinga Genetics, and she's kind of going with that because it sounds like a Bond villain or somebody who's in biotech, who is the very impressive CEO of Publish Drive. So you mentioned Dan from Draft to Digital, and Publish Drive, I guess, are competitors of Draft to Digital, doing a similar thing in a similar space, aggregating books out to all the platforms. And she showed me some of the changes to the platform that they're rolling out at the moment. And they're working hard, as D2D do, at making this a very useful and powerful tool for indies, making life a little bit easier. I mean, on that front, Mark, where are you on that? Do you like to still have control and upload your books to each individual platform, or do you use aggregators like Draft to Digital and Publish Drive to do that for you?
Well, I mean, most of the time I'm in KU exclusively at the moment, so I don't have those issues. But with new releases, I go wide for about a month. And where possible, the best advice is to do it yourself. And, I love Draft to Digital. I've been using them for a long time. And they've enabled me to get into Barnes & Noble, which is a little bit more difficult for UK authors than it is for people in the US. And also some of the smaller stores, places like Scribd or Scrib, however they want to call it, 24 Signs, I think it's called. They've got a slew of others that you can get into, and you can use them to get into everywhere. But the best advice, go to Kobo directly. It's not difficult, and you'll be able to run promotions more easily than you would if you went through an aggregator. Apple as well. I mean, Apple, if you don't have a Mac, Apple's uploading is convoluted, to put it kindly. So there is an argument to be made for going into the Apple Store through an aggregator. It will make things a lot easier. But on the other hand, I've been going direct with them for ages, so it's not a big deal for me to keep doing that. But it's, as I often say, horses for courses. It really depends on what your priorities are. Yeah.
And one interesting thing about Publish Drive, and we've got an interview with Kinga coming up in the next few weeks, is that so I think both Draft to Digital and Publish Drive take 10%, roughly that 10% of your royalty for the service. But Publish Drive have taken a rather bold step of capping that at $100 on their subscription plan. So for authors, in fact for you, Mark, for the authors turning over $1,000 a month plus, in your case a lot plus, I would imagine that's going to be quite an attractive thing. It'll be interesting to see whether D2D respond at some point with that. So we'll keep a watching brief on those developments in the area. Good. And we should just say it's January, so we're planning the year, and we're likely to be SPF will have a presence of some sort at least 3 conferences in 2019. No, 4 that I can think of. So we're going to start the year in March at London Book Fair, obviously held in London, as the name suggests. And that's mid-March, early mid-March, 12th, something like that, 12th, 13th, 14th, I think, from the top of my head. We will have a drinks bash on the Wednesday night, a venue to be announced in London. So if you're anywhere within spitting distance of London, come along and grab a beer off me, Mark, or John. In fact, we may even have our new man there, Tom, may come along to that as well. After that, it is going to be Thrillerfest in New York. So at the moment, you're not down for Thrillerfest, Mark, but John and I will go to that for sure. That was a brilliant place for us to pick up interviews with some really exciting and high-profile authors last year. So we'll be hoping to do that on behalf of the Self-Publishing Show, grab you some big names. Again, that will be our aim for the week. And we will then go to NINC in September, which is held in Florida. And NINC is Novelist Inc. And if you don't know the organisation, it is sort of exclusive in that there's criteria to join. So you have to be a published author or self-published author with a certain amount of success. You can look up the criteria on their website. But the conference is a very positive and I think very useful. I think last year I saw more people with wads of notes coming out of sessions at NINC than almost anywhere else. I think a very useful one as well, especially my session. I thought they came out with a lot of notes from that. And finally, 20 Books Vegas. So 20 Books is, such a vibrant and exciting community. And I can't tell you, I'm still feeling a little bit lifted from being there in the autumn last year, because to be in the company of 700 odd other indie authors talking the language of indie authoring is great. Instead of having those conversations that you have with people every now and again, isn't it a bit vain publishing your own book? Or how do you get an agent these days? And you're in a room with people who've way past all those basics about what indie authoring is about and are into the weeds of how to make it work. And all tribute to Craig and to Michael. For all the work they do. So we'll be back at 20 Books Vegas in November. So if you're at any of those conferences, we will at some point be at a bar with our credit card behind there, shaking hands and buying some drinks, and we'd love you to come and say hello to us. So, and I think 20 Books Vegas is probably the popular one. I think that's the most popular one, especially if you're romance. Obviously, Thrillerfest won't be a big deal. Should say we're not going to go to this year, but actually in New York just after Thrillerfest is RWA. So, that's
right. Yeah, I've been to the last 2 of those, and they haven't asked me back this year. So
not romantic.
What I did last year. No, I think it's fine. I think it's not a bad idea to have a fallow year, and I'll probably go back the year after next year. I'll go back to that. But yeah, that's just after Thrillerfest.
Yeah. Now, today's interviewee actually is somebody who we bumped into at one of those conferences last year. We bumped into Erica Ridley at NINC and started talking to her about newsletters. And I think you were impressed in what she had to say and the way she approaches newsletters. And this is a subject, it's a big subject. We get asked it a lot, and I know that authors worry about it, and I'm hopefully, touch wood, coming to publication this year. So I will be one of those people thinking about what do I put in my newsletter? How frequently do I do it? How do I look after my mailing list and so on? And Erica thinks a lot about this, is very intelligent on the subject, very intelligent anyway. And so we sat down with Erica. And so that's today's interview. And I think we'll probably hear from Erica now. And then Mark and I will have a quick chat about other things off the back of that. So let's hear from Erica.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Okay, Erica, why don't you first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here.
All the way from Costa Rica,
yes,
here to Florida. Probably feels the same. It's like tropical here. What's it like? Costa Rica's quite high.
Yeah, I live in the mountains, so it's about 70 to 80 Fahrenheit year round. So low 20s, I guess, centigrade.
Yeah. In new money. And I love the heat, but I'm struggling a little bit. I think everyone struggles a little bit here. It's so oppressive, isn't it?
It's very hot, yes.
Yeah, and it's nearly October. Okay, anyway, that's the weather, because I'm British. We have to discuss the weather for a few minutes first. Welcome to the podcast, and you should perhaps just tell us a bit about who you are before we go on.
Okay, well, I currently write historical romance. I have about 20 books out. Prior to writing full-time, my original background is in marketing. My degree is in international marketing and business, and then I worked for about 20 years in the corporate world doing marketing, advertising, websites, things like that, which has really helped me when I made the jump from traditional publishing to indie publishing.
Excellent, and we're going to talk specifically about newsletters and emails today, but let's learn a little bit more about you then. So historical romance, where and when are they set?
Regency, England, so 1811 to 1820.
Okay, that's quite specific.
Yeah, well, it's the only period, as you probably know, in England's history where...
Prince Regents.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, we do wonder whether it might happen again, because the Queen, bless her, is an amazing individual, is well into her 90s now, and people occasionally speculate that Charles may become a regent at some point.
Fascinating.
You'd have to have a sequel series
Yes.
of the second regency. And you're Spanish fluent as well, I know, because you live in Costa Rica now, so that's been useful. Do you write in Spanish as well as English? Or
I write in English, although I do go to writers' conferences and have writer friends in Costa Rica, of course, where I live my life in Spanish. But truly right now the market in Spanish isn't really as good as the English market by a long shot. So right now I'm focusing just on English.
Okay. But like all these things in the digital world, there's only more people coming online, so that will change in the future. And you'll be well placed for that. I'll send you my books for translation. Okay, good. So a bit more about your books. Sorry, how many have you written and published, and how's it going for you?
Written about, published probably about 20. There's a few that will never see the light of day, hopefully. So that's going pretty well, actually. So when I started with traditional publishing, I didn't make the hugest splash originally, but moving to indie was very helpful. I figured out, it took me probably about a year to figure out best practices for how to really launch a career. But I was able to get a fairly good following, hit a couple lists on my own, so that was exciting. And it has been fun just to watch things snowball and build, it feels like, every year.
And it's now your full-time
income? Yes, it's
Yeah.
definitely my full-time. I'm pleased to say I'm doing better as an author now than I ever was in my previous job, which I did not think would ever happen. So it's exciting.
That's excellent. Good. Well, that's good to hear. Okay, so we're going to talk about mailing lists, and really, when we think about what an author needs to set up, it's one of the fundamentals, and it's something that Mark preaches a lot. Still occasionally meet people who say, I don't want to do a newsletter. And I think it's Maria Lewis on this podcast said, whenever someone says that to her, she says, why would you not want to do a newsletter? So let's talk about newsletter. So first of all, here we are in late 2018. Is it still in prime position for something an author should do?
It is absolutely fundamental. And I too am always shocked when I meet people and they either don't have a list or they have one and they've never actually sent anything to it. And they're missing out on one of the most powerful tools that we have and own and isn't dependent on anyone else's whim.
Yeah, so that is a key part of this, isn't it?
Absolutely.
People can buy your books on Amazon, they can leave reviews, they can leave comments on various social media platforms, but unless you've got their email address, you don't own that. And Amazon aren't going to give
They're not going to show that.
email address to you. So in terms of a list as a commercial part of the setup, how do you see it working for an author? What are the key things a list brings an author?
Oh, so many things. Of course, when you are asking people to sign up for a list of any kind, the least information you ask from them, the more likely they are to sign up. So at the very basic level, you want their email address so that you can communicate when you have news, which can include sales, new releases, appearances, signings, whatever. But if you have more data, you can help them help you. You can help create your own kind of one-click environment. Instead of automatically sending your readers to a certain retailer, if you know they prefer another one, you can do it that way. If you're part of a promotion that's only in English language countries or just in the UK or whatever, you can segment and you can just really give the reader the kind of experience that they're looking for with frequency and content.
Make it as easy as possible for each reader.
Exactly.
And how do you suggest doing that? Because as you rightly say, and we're a bit wary about this in our SPF business of asking for too much information when you're simply trying to get somebody to sign up to your list.
Yeah, so there's a couple tricks there. So if you're truly doing a push just to get people on your list, then in that case I will always recommend just ask for the email address. But you definitely want to have optional fields in their profile where they can go in and you can encourage them to do so in your onboarding process or anytime later to update their profile with information. Like for example, on mine, I ask, where do you buy your books? What store of this handy dandy drop down list is your favorite. And not everyone fills it out. However, I can figure it out on my own because the reporting after you send out a newsletter will let me know, did you click Kobo? Did you click Barnes & Noble? And even if they haven't told me, just with a couple clicks on my end, I can update that data for them, and then I know going forward, and I can provide them with a better experience from that moment on.
And then you can automate that.
Exactly.
Because you use custom fields in an email. We shouldn't probably assume people have too much knowledge on this. Some people will be using the stuff and some people won't know what we're talking about.
Right.
So let's talk to those people as well.
Sure.
So how would you, if you know somebody, if I'm on your list and you've deduced I use Kobo, how would you then
use that information? There's a couple different ways. If you are not a very techie person, then probably the easiest way would be to segment your list, and if you have just a Kobo promotion, just to send to the Kobo people or whatever. If you are a little bit less fearful of putting in a little bit of code, there's a thing that's called Conditional Merge, which is kind of like an if-then statement. If they shop on Amazon, put in the Amazon link. If they shop at Kobo, put in the Kobo link, like that. And that's what I do because it allows me to send just one email instead of sending out different versions to different people. But at the end of the day, it all does the same thing. And so there are many methods to get the same results.
Yeah, so it depends how confident you are with it.
Exactly.
And just to explain that, so you would say, okay, click link to download the book, and that's the point at which the code. So at your end, it looks a bit messy. It says if they're not, but at their end, it's just a link.
That's exactly it. I've done some A/B testing, and it turns out that even though, regardless of me knowing where you like to shop, I will include links to all the retailers because maybe you've gotten a new device, things can change, right? But in all my A/B testing, the reader is more likely to click on the book cover than any textual link.
Right.
And that is where I can make it go to the place that you want it to go. And so I will do that.
Okay, so that's clever. So the book cover is the bit where
that's what they're going to click, no matter if you say.
Yeah. Most customized to them. Okay, I like that. Well, why don't we, whilst we're talking more technically, talk about the platforms available to you?
Sure.
And gosh, there are probably 25, you and I could probably name 25 straight away that
Easily.
You've got options. And there's some big ones that people know. Mailchimp, I guess, is the obvious one. But What do you recommend in terms of where people jump in here?
It's always a little bit of a sticky wicket because some people are more price sensitive, or they actually don't want too many options because they're afraid of the platform or whatever. If you are starting from zero and you don't have a platform, I do usually recommend Mailchimp because you can have up to 2,000 subscribers for free, and that usually gives you a chance to play. And even on their free platform, they allow automations and things that are very powerful, so you can kind of jump in and see all the things that you can do. Once you amass a big list, in theory, if you are developing a good list, then even as it gets more expensive, it doesn't matter because you're making that money back every time you're sending out a newsletter anyway to promote your books. But for more price-sensitive people, there are other platforms like I have not personally used MailerLite and Mad Mimi and those, but I know there are many authors who do and have chosen them because of their pricing. More than anything. And
we hear MailerLite talked about a lot for pricing, and a lot of people say it does more or less the same as ConvertKit, but is a better price point.
Right.
Although we should also say MailerLite have had a couple of technical hiccups.
Yeah, unfortunately. So I have not been able to, anytime I've heard it come up recently, I have had to mention that because it is very concerning.
Yeah.
You don't want to, when you're on a shared server and you know that you definitely don't want to be on a shared server with someone who is spamming or something like that, because if your server gets caught in a blacklist, then even though you've done nothing wrong, your email also doesn't come through. And that was one of the issues that they had this past month.
It was. And they were very upfront about it, very honest about what had happened, and which I think was a good sign.
It was excellent.
Yeah, in terms of how they're moving on from that. But it's definitely worth doing some research. But MailerLite is definitely one. We're going to introduce MailerLite module to our 101 course because people have asked for it.
Yeah.
So at the moment we've got Mailchimp, ConvertKit, a couple of others, can't remember.
Yeah, ConvertKit's a good one too.
So these, and they are more sophisticated. I mean, Mailchimp is more sophisticated now than it was when we started.
Yeah, in fact, they just did a redesign this week because they're trying, kind of like
Dunkin' Donuts. It means we've got to redo the Mailchimp module now.
Well, more of a, I guess. Yeah,
Brilliant.
sorry.
Thanks.
Well, kind of like Dunkin' Donuts is taking the word donuts out of their title because they want to be known for more things.
Well, they're just Dunkin' now.
They're just Dunkin' now, so which makes no sense without an object to dunk, but whatever. Yeah. I wasn't on their focus group.
Unless they're called Dunkin'. Hello. Okay.
But so Mailchimp is trying to focus on more than just mail. Now that they do landing pages and ads and all these other things, they're trying to kind of make sure people are aware of all the other things that they can do. So. Yeah. But one thing I would say, besides just price, probably the most important thing when you're looking at which provider to do is think of all the ways that you want to use it. So one of the advantages of Mailchimp is all its integrations. Basically anything that integrates with an email service provider, Mailchimp is usually one of them. And there are several others that integrate with different things, whether that thing is Facebook or InstaFreebie or Zapier, or the list goes on. But just kind of think of how you want to use your list and make sure that you are set up to not give yourself additional work, exporting and importing and all these kinds of things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we live and die by Zapier in particular.
Yes.
It sits between a lot of our platforms. So making sure that whichever you choose comes up on a Zapier list. And again, people might not know what Zapier is. So Zapier is a little service that you subscribe to that allows you to have a flow of information. So in fact, I think I haven't done it yet, but I was telling John, we are moving from Happy Fox to Zendesk, our help service. And we're using both, and I'm going to use Zapier for anyone who leaves a message on Happy Fox will auto-generate an email into Zendesk. That's exactly what sort of thing it does. People run Facebook ads, and Mark uses it to drop the Facebook email address from his lead gen ads into Infusionsoft that we use.
Exactly.
So yeah, make sure things integrate.
Yeah.
It's getting a bit technical here, but it's quite difficult not to talk technically a bit about this because, in fact, let's dwell on that for a second because this does terrify some authors. I can already imagine maybe someone listening to this thinking, I can never do that. I can never do all this technical stuff. I don't know what they're talking about.
Right. So usually I tell people you don't have to. It's kind of like when you are given a new car. You need to know how to drive the car and do all the basic functionality. But if you never want to use its built-in GPS system or you don't want to use its Wi-Fi to hook up your kid's iPad to Netflix or something like that, it's okay. It's all going to be fine as long as you can get from point A to point B, which is what we're trying to do with newsletters. But I do think it's important to know what options are available to you so that you get the right car, right?
Yeah.
So that when you decide that you do want to do something else, because it can be problematic to switch from, well, I don't want to say problematic, but it can be time consuming. There can be things that can come up when you switch from one provider to another. And just as a short pro tip there, you don't want to use the default sign up links that Mailchimp or MadMimi or anyone else gives to you. You want to have an evergreen link so that if you are putting your sign up link in your back matter of your book or on your bookmarks or whatever, and you do change your mind later for the reason of whatever, there's a new great thing that comes out, readers can still find you.
Yeah, so you'd use Erica.com or what's your author name?
Erica Ridley. So ericaridley.com would be
I'd use
mine.
jamesbatch.com and then that ports between whatever sits in the background.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a good pro tip. And changing service providers is worth mentioning because we have a traditional trail, I suppose, which used to be, before Mailchimp became as sophisticated as it is now, we would generally recommend that people did migrate from Mailchimp to the sort of ConvertKit mailer level next. And we've gone all the way to Infusionsoft, which is probably more than most people will need.
Right.
And that's not a straightforward process.
Right.
Moving between
platforms. Because every provider does things a little bit differently. They handle segmentation or automation. And so sometimes, particularly with their templates, for example, if you're updating widgets instead of having just a whole template of code that you're copying and pasting in, there can be some time-consuming elements to recreate your environment. So
are we getting to the point where Mailchimp does enough now that most authors could stay on it?
Oh, I would say so. I think most authors, I don't think they're even using a fraction of what Mailchimp now does, now that it has all the customization and conditionals and automations and everything like that. I think that's...
So it might come down to price after that, because Mailchimp does get expensive once your list starts really growing.
That is true, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so when the mailer
from Mailchimp on up with the service providers, it gets a little bit pricier. Yeah. But again, if your list is quality and you're sending out the kind of content that your readers are responding to, then it shouldn't be an issue.
Which brings me on to the next area to talk about. So we kind of dealt with the basics of having your basic platform. So how should people be using their mailing list?
Okay, the first thing, I'm going to back up actually slightly. People are saying, okay, so I created this mailing list and now no one's in it. I have 11 people, how am I getting the people? So the first thing that you want to make sure you're doing is you take that evergreen link and you put it everywhere. It should be in your bio on all the vendor platforms, on BookBub, on anytime you do an interview, anytime you have anything anywhere. I usually have it even as my first line in my Twitter bio and my Facebook, everything like that. And I'm a total nerd, so I do use tracking links sometimes, and I know that it works, that people are coming from there. If you're indie particularly, then you have the advantage of being able to put it in your front and back matter of your book, which not only is helpful for people who are downloading your book, but also people who are doing look-in sites and things like that can be like, well, maybe I don't have the money to buy the $7.99 book right now, but I'm interested. Maybe I'll join the mailing list, see what it's all about, and when it goes on sale, I'll hear about it or something like that to get more people funneling in. But so once you have them signing up from your mailing list, now what? So the first thing I would say is you definitely need some sort of automation, even if it's only just an original welcome letter. That's your basic minimum, and it should go out immediately. Am I going too fast?
No, you're not. You're absolutely. I was just adjusting my knee and making sure that all this stuff didn't fall onto the floor.
Okay.
So sorry, it was slightly distracting. But yeah, I will pause you there. So you're talking here about something that automatically fires back.
Exactly.
When somebody signs up initially. So it's not like you see somebody signed up and then a few hours later get to write them a welcome email.
And that's why where a service like Zapier or whatever can come in handy, because they can make it happen within 15 minutes, which is not too much of a delay if whatever provider you're using doesn't integrate. But this is the moment, this is really the key moment. This is when they're the most excited about signing up for your newsletter. So you actually have an opportunity to do many things all at once. So for example, they're signing up and you have both the automated welcome email that goes out, but also the confirmation page. So your confirmation page, you can upsell them, one thing. You can give them something else that maybe they might be interested in. Perhaps it's a box set, perhaps it's your Facebook, perhaps it's whatever, and kind of give them a lagniappe, a little extra for having joined up for your list. And then the same thing in your welcome email. I usually say you don't want to start selling to them right away. I would, if possible, give a good 3, 4, 5 email welcome sequence that drips in, often called a drip campaign, over a series of days or weeks to get them used to who you are. There's been many surveys done, and just psychologically, we are more likely to want to interact with, and that includes purchase from people we feel like we know. Just like people feel like they know celebrities and they run out and buy the Kardashians' game or perfume or whatever. Because they feel
you know me so well.
Yeah, they feel like they have that connection, and that's something you can do and should do. The reader signed up for your list because they're interested in you. They know what your book is. They want to know more about you, and so kind of give them that. That's what they're looking for. And if you have what is often called a reader magnet or some sort of gift for them, a little additional push to get them on your list, even better. Give that out with your welcome email. A lot of people have asked me if they're traditionally published or they're in KU or whatever the case may be, perhaps they don't have a book to give out. Is all hope lost? It is not. There are 30 or 40 other things that you could send instead of that. You could use a deleted scene, a bonus epilogue, a bonus prologue. If your book has recipes, use that. If you're a forensic psychologist, maybe it could be some piece of research or detail or any kind of thing. The reader just wants to know more about you and your story world, and just give them a reason to sign up. And then make sure you deliver on whatever the promise is that was in your hook for signing up in the first place, right? Yeah. Sign up for my list, which also from a wording perspective, I usually don't recommend saying sign up for my newsletter. I think that's a mistake. That is a favor to you, the author. You always want to word everything as a favor for the reader. And of course, you're not wording it, you actually are granting a favor of some kind.
So sign up here for your free.
That's right. Whatever. Send me my free book, my free recipe, my free bonus epilogue, or whatever the thing is, a coupon for 20% off or whatever the thing is, and then deliver on that immediately. And then in your second email, if you do an automation process, remind them, did they get it? If you didn't get it, here's that download link again, and give them just trickle in a little bit more information. They're not looking for your giant Wikipedia entry of your life story, but they do want to know a little bit more each time, and it gives you a chance not to clutter them with demands up front. I wouldn't put all your social media, all your vendor links, follow me everywhere in the first email. That's way too soon.
Yeah.
It's like a fourth date kind of conversation.
That's a good way of thinking about it. We're not first date people.
Yeah.
We build a relationship here.
We're ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Regency England. Think of that. Okay, so they're the really good stuff there, and a couple of important things that you mentioned just to reinforce that the lead magnet, if you've promised the lead magnet, deliver it. So, okay, it sounds kind of obvious, and that does mean being aware of how people are coming onto your list, because you might have one landing page that gives away a free book, another landing page which is at the end of a book where they sign up for something else you've created. In fact, Mark had a brilliant one. He knocked up here, so his John Milton character's a washed up MI6 spy, and he did his personnel report.
Oh,
It
nice.
had been
Excellent.
leaked from MI6. So at the end of the book, when someone obviously got to the end, they've enjoyed the book, and he said, download John Milton's personnel file, you've got a really high percentage conversion rate on that. So he has to make sure that he's aware that they've come onto his list via that avenue, and that email delivers what he's promised.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is when, again, your profile data, and that's probably a field that's not visible to the user, but it's on the sign-up form, and then in your automation sequence, you can use the conditional logic, like we mentioned, to make sure they get the right item. Whether you're downloading off your website, another thing to consider is, depending on what it is, how are you providing support for this item? If it's a PDF, most people can do that with no problem. But some people have never sideloaded an EPUB or a Mobi before, and they don't know what to do with that. So if you are only going to put it on your website as a download link, you have to be prepared to deal with the emails when people are saying, oh, I don't know how to get it on my device.
Yeah. Because there is BookFunnel.
Which is what I was just about.
Yeah.
I preach BookFunnel. I love BookFunnel.
Every author loves BookFunnel.
Yes. They're magical. And
There's
they
a
come
lot of
up with new
services around
things.
here, and we can't be happy about every single service that comes to us, but BookFunnel is the one that's kind of universally. David Courtney's done he's here at this conference. He's done a fantastic job with that. So yeah, Mark remembers the days of sending out the links, dealing with the queries 2 or 3 times a day, explain to somebody who might be in their 60s and has never turned a Kindle on properly before. And,
you ask them what kind it is, they don't know, and then it's...
Well, people like John, who's sitting there now. Can you imagine trying to explain to him how to put a book onto a Kindle?
What is a Kindle?
Yeah, what is a Kindle? Be here a long time. So that makes life easier. And there's, you've talked about some of these conveniences and automations. A really important part of this, of trying to set up a fire and forget process.
Exactly.
So you are concentrating on products, your books.
Yeah. And I love automations. I don't want to skip too far ahead, but I've automated a lot more than what your average person automates with their newsletter. Maybe later, if we have time, I can talk about some of my life hacks with that. But it's a very, very powerful tool. So I would highly recommend only going with a service provider that gives you that option.
Yeah, okay. So automation. So at the moment we are talking about, things like tags, which you get inside the mailing list, would be enough for you to do a lot of what we've just spoken about. So somebody comes in off a particular route via Zapier, and at the Zapier point, you can have the tag applied to them. So when they arrive into Mailchimp, whatever it is, they've got this tag. Mailchimp can then recognize that, send them off to get a particular email in response. So automation is that, but a bit more advanced. Triggered usually by something like a tag, or maybe
it can be triggered by any kind of thing. It can be triggered. So I'm just going to roll back to the welcome sequence again, because I use a different kind of automation in there. So on my last email, my welcome sequence, I ask, how long have we known each other? And then I give choices. I read your first series, I read your second series, we're brand new friends, or we're BFFs, I've read everything you've ever written. And depending on what they click, they get a different than automation sequence. So if they've only read the first series I ever wrote, then they get an email that introduces them to a different series with a little starter and, things like that. And if they click the link that says, I'm your BFF, I've read everything that you've ever written in your whole life, I have a collection of your grocery list, then they get a different one that invites them to be on my review crew, for example. And so that trigger is an interaction, what link they've clicked. And you can also add to it and automatically tag them as, these are street team leads or whatever. These are fans of, if you write 2 different things. If you write historical and contemporary, you can tag your readers that way based on their actions as being Amazon readers, or, there's all sorts of things you can do to make your life easier by having it happen automatically.
So you say you've got a slightly more advanced set of automations than most authors. Tell me about what service provider do you use, by the way?
I use Mailchimp.
Okay.
Currently. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So it really is able to do pretty much everything. It wasn't a few years ago.
I know.
Mailchimp really had its limitations quite quickly.
It really did, and I almost moved when I learned they were about to release some of these things that I do now. So yeah, I'm glad they did. They seem to always be.
So what are you automating? What are your secrets?
So a couple things that I also do besides, your newsletter platform is more than just your readers. Obviously that's your minimum, so definitely do that. But if you, and people have their different opinions on it, but if you do review copies of your books, there are ways to automate that to make your life easier. If you have a review team, which is not to be confused with, like bloggers and everything, you can automate that as well. So like one service that I use is NetGalley. There are many other ones like Edelweiss that do similar things. And then the people that are on there, which are booksellers, librarians, bloggers, influencers of various different kinds, can indicate when they download your book whether or not they would like to hear from you, the author. Most people that I speak to have never done anything with this information. In fact, they've never even downloaded the spreadsheet, so they don't even know that these people would love to hear from you in the future. So they've essentially already opted in through the NetGalley system. And they must say yes or no, do they want to hear from the author? And so then the next time you have, say that's book 1 in your series, the next time you have book 2 come out and you put it on NetGalley, don't just wait to see if by the chance of God those people happen to stumble across it on the NetGalley website in time to download it before your archive date is set. Email them, let them know. Hey, book 2 is out, it's right here. And if you do that every time and you keep adding the new people that are interested, then it just creates this wonderful snowball effect that now if I put a book on NetGalley and I send it out, there's 1,000 downloads in a couple hours, like it's crazy. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't do what, just like readers, they want to hear from you. They're on NetGalley for a reason. You write the kind of book they're interested in, they gave you a 3, 4, 5-star review, they want to know your next thing, let them know. And again, with an automation, you can make it just really easy. And then it's just one email that you send out. And so then I do similar things for example, promo tours. I'm very busy. I don't have a lot of time to sit around writing questionnaires, answers for Q&As and things like that. But I do want to have relationships with bloggers. So another thing you can do, if you are like me and you don't have a lot of free time, particularly leading up to a new release, to answer dozens of individual Q&As with each blogger.
I was going to ask you about that, because however much you automate, you are going to get... well, I'll talk about readers as well, because some readers are going to email you, and obviously bloggers and review copies do require some...
Yeah, so... so those are a couple different questions.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
So, do you want me to go back to the reviewers before we skip ahead to promo tour?
Let's talk the reviewer. You started with the reviewers, but I'm also interested to know about your approach to how often whether you should answer readers' emails, etc. So, but let's talk about reviewers, and these are smaller groups of people, but require some intervention.
Although it's a very, very small scale. So when I do upload my review copy to the service of your choice, I happen to use NetGalley, I create a special copy for that. So the first couple pages of front matter, I'm not trying to get them to sign up for a mailing list or follow me on BookBub or anything like that. I know who they are because they're on NetGalley and they're downloading this, and so I can give them the information they need up front so they don't have to email me for it. So in there I'll say, if they may not already be on my reviewer list, and I give them the link so that they can sign up themselves, and they do. And I give them a link to what I was about to talk about, which are media kits that I have on my website. So anything they might want to know about me, the book they're reading, the series it belongs to, how it fits into the world right now, is available for them at one click. And so I put all that kind of information there. If it's a librarian, I'm willing to come talk to your book club and, all this kind of stuff there, which usually it's kind of like frequently asked questions, right? You just answer them one time up front. And then if you get a lot of questions about the same thing, you just add it to the next book.
And you put this in the book?
I literally put it in the book.
Special version of the book.
It is a special review copy of the book. So it doesn't just have a cover that says this is an advanced reader copy. It has additional content that is specifically for reviewers. And, help you. They want to know the context. So, this is the third book in the series. But it's standalone, blah, blah, blah. You can tell them, and it helps them. And if you have, for example, if you have a tagline for your book or for your series, or sometimes they'll use it. I mean, they want to spread the word. Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't have the way of condensing your 400 pages into a soundbite, but if you've already done it for them, it at least gives them something to riff off of. And so a lot of that work is done for them, which they appreciate as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing. So with the promo tours and with the reviewers, I link to, as I mentioned, a media kit. What's in the media kit? It's got my bio, it's got a Q&A, it has a short, medium, and long excerpt from the book. It's got all the different covers, ebook, paperback, audiobook, or whatever. It's got all the different teasers. So you might have Facebook-sized ones, and you might have Instagram square ones or whatever, because you don't know how they're going to use it. But if you can give them everything they might need up front, you are erasing a lot of the hassle of trying to figure out what they might want, and then there are far fewer questions at the end.
Yeah. I think the media kit, which might be a new concept to some people, but I used to work in a newsroom, and I can tell you from being in a newsroom and from then doing some PR for some friends and other companies afterwards, if you put together a good media kit or you receive a good media kit in a newsroom, you are exponentially more likely to see that in print, because we're lazy journalists, and if you've got a pen pick of you, images of your book cover, some quotes, Your job is half done at that point, and it's a very easy way to fill up a column inch. And I used to get people's books into magazines, aviation magazines, by making it as easy as possible for the journalist.
Exactly. I mean, I've seen so many that are literal copy and paste, and so it's perfect. You give them the information they want, they just take it away. It's win-win for everyone.
If you remember how lazy journalists are, you can never go wrong with that. Okay, that's great. A really interesting way of doing that. And again, making your life, it's a bit of work to start off with, but the idea is it then makes your life easier. And, yeah, and if people do contact you, it might be to do a full interview. Something above and beyond that you can provide in the book, which is great. So you're not being contacted just to give them the basics.
Exactly.
Facts. Good. Okay, so the other sort of interaction I guess you can't really automate is emails back from readers, and I guess at the beginning that's a flattering thing for authors. Over time, Mark gets to the point now of several a day. So How do you deal with that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. At the beginning, it's easy, and then suddenly, one time in an email that I sent out, it was at the end of the year, and people always talk about resolutions and this and that. I decided to do something differently, and I said, what was the craziest, most impactful thing that happened to you this year? And I got thousands of responses, and I didn't anticipate that. And so then I was just like, I can't reply to all these and meet my deadline. And so it was this whole stressful period where I was trying to do all things. And so just be aware that the bigger your list gets, the more engaged they get. They will respond to you if you give a provocative enough question, or if you're incentivizing it with a giveaway or something like that. Some authors will have a separate email that responses to their newsletters go into, that they or an assistant can help with if it is easy questions. Like if the question is there a series order or something like that, it may not require the author's necessarily intervention. They're not really trying to reach out on a personal level. They just have a factual question. I don't actually have someone that I pay to answer my emails. But if it's something like that, I don't see why there would be any issue with that. I will also say sometimes it does get overwhelming, and you kind of have to make a judgment call as well. So one other automation that I do is a happy birthday one. If I know your birthday, then I will send you a little treat on your birthday, and it's different every year. So if you've been on my list for 8 years, you get a different gift from me every year. And not everybody does it, but about 10% of the list does.
What sort of gift?
So it could be like
not the Costa Rican beer you bought us.
Now everybody knows the secret.
Cool. Yeah.
No, something downloadable. So maybe it's a bonus epilogue. Maybe it's a free book from the backlist, or just something that could be fun. One thing that I'm starting new this year, I just started a new gift. So spoiler. It's a box set of books with other people that write historical romance. Is the new one, so that's kind of a fun one. So even if you've read mine, because sometimes my fans have read all mine, so there's nothing really they want from my backlist because they have it already, but it's a great way for them to discover new authors as well. I'm a big fan of spreading the love. But so now I don't remember where we were
going. That's fine. That's good. It's a good answer. So and I think the little tips of what you actually do here are very useful to people, because it brings me on to really content.
Right.
And one of the worries I think authors have right at the beginning is, what am I going to say? How often should I be emailing my list, and what am I going to say to them?
Well, and actually, so that is an excellent point. So usually what I tell people is whatever you promised up front is the thing you have to stick to. So if you tell people they're signing up for a new release only list and you have one new release a year, then don't suddenly become an every Wednesday spammer. But on the other hand, if you're saying, join my list, I will share with you all the great things about my puppy and my twins and my this and my that, then that is why those people are signing up, and don't suddenly go off the grid for 6 months and forget about them, because then you're kind of breaking that contract with the reader's expectations. So there's no right or wrong answer, just as long as you're meeting reader expectations. Okay. And if you're not sure, you can give them options as well. You can say, well, I have a chatty email that goes out every Monday or every month or whatever your thing is, but if you want new releases only, just click here and give them that option, and then you can segment and give the reader what they want, which is really the key thing.
Yeah, we do that actually in SPF. We give people an option of courses only, monthly summary, or the weekly email. Most people still opt for the weekly email, by the way, but I think it stops the others unsubscribing. Yeah. Because they don't really want the weekly email, but they would quite like to know when there's a course available. Exactly. So it just stops those unsubs. We haven't mentioned unsubs. Mm-hmm. It is a fact of life.
It is a fact of life.
how should people feel when somebody unsubscribes?
Unsubs are your friend.
Yeah.
It is like a self-cleaning oven. It is keeping your mailing list in order for you. And actually, it is also an opportunity, because when someone unsubscribes, it doesn't necessarily mean that they hate you. If you just send out a really political email, maybe it does. But in normal circumstances, it could be for any number of things. Maybe they just signed up for a bunch of Insta freebie promos and their email is overwhelming. Maybe they accidentally signed up under their work email and they're trying to switch, or whatever the case. Actually, at the moment of them unsubscribing, you have an additional opportunity. On the unsubscribe page is your one last chance to say or offer something to the reader. And so what I have on that page, for example, is I'll say too much email, and I give them the opportunity if they want to follow me on Facebook or Twitter, and I also say here is a free gift before you go, and I link to a couple permafrees that I have, and just a bonus thing because I want to make sure we're leaving on good terms. You know, it's not you, it's not me, you know, just keep having warm fuzzies when you hear my name. I still like you, you know, and it is often something that, and people also unsubscribe in error occasionally, so it gives another chance to reach out.
And I always think that when people unsubscribe, you're getting a more focused list as well, because if people aren't interested in your, there's no point in having an email address on there if somebody's not your target audience. So you create a more relevant list ultimately. And beyond people unsubscribing, how about list cleansing, list hygiene, as some people call it?
Okay.
You proactively going in and removing people?
I am not. So that is a bit of a controversial thing, and I usually tell people, again, there's no right or wrong answer. It often depends if you're very price conscious, particularly.
Because you pay by the number of subscribers.
But you pay by the number of the subscribers, and if you just have a budget of X, then by all means go in and clear out the people that you can't tell if they're ever clicking on your emails or not. But I will say that although it's absolutely true that by cleaning your list, your open rates go up, your click rates go up, it is just because you took out the people that weren't responding. So if they're reading in a plain text environment, or if they're just seeing the subject line and they're going and downloading your book elsewhere, you are losing that interaction by cleaning them from your list.
Yeah, so just because it says they're unengaged doesn't mean they're not. They are actually unengaged,
exactly.
And we are aware of that ourselves, and when we look at the list. But
so it's kind of a personal decision. I have chosen not. I have cleaned twice and regretted it both times. So
okay. Oh, okay. Interesting. Right, we're coming to the last few minutes. It's been fascinating. I mean, this is obviously a big subject, and it hasn't surprised me that the interview time has ripped through. Two things I've got to mention to you. One is, do we mention GDPR?
Oh, we haven't mentioned it yet.
We haven't, so we should mention GDPR.
We absolutely should. So GDPR, although it is technically for the European Union, it affects all of us because we all have readers from all over the world, and the most likely thing is that's the direction that privacy is moving in. People being more aware of what they're signing up for and explicitly signing up for lists. So I usually tell people also there's a lot of these fly-by-night promos out there where everybody shares a spreadsheet of emails or when you join other authors, and it's a terrible idea. Don't ever do it, because you definitely want people, for many reasons, not just for the law, but you want people who actually care about your list signing up for it. You can also, even before the GDPR thing, if you send out a campaign and it has too many unsubscribes or too many marks as spam, you can lose your account access just that easily as well. So that's also a concern. But definitely on your sign-up form, make it very clear what the deal is, what they're signing up for, how often they're going to get it. You should have a privacy policy that's linked on that very same page that explains everything that you intend to do with that data and how they can have you not do it, just to make sure that you stay on the right side of the law.
Yeah, we did a lot on GDPR, obviously it went through, and but I have noticed, there was a debate about whether you needed the separate tick box for the explicit opt-in consent. Quite a lot of people said yes, but lots of very big organisations that clearly have lots of lawyers have not gone down that route. I've noticed they're still, and as long, my view personally, I'm not a lawyer, we always have to say that,
right,
is that as long as you're making it clear people are joining your list,
that's my view too.
You're not going to get complaints from that.
Yeah, you're saying, what's your email to sign up for my list? And right underneath it, yes, I also want to sign up for your list. That's the whole reason they're filling out the form. So
exactly, yeah. So we've been more relaxed about it now than we were at the time when everyone was changing their landing page, as it turned out, for no real reason. But it's common sense. If you're buying a CD full of emails and sending something out to it, clearly you would deserve to be in prison.
Right, exactly.
This is not, they're the people the GDPR, I think, is really after. Okay, well, I'm pleased we dealt with GDPR quickly. My last area, because you mentioned a couple of third-party services, I mean, Insta Freebie and so on. So are some of these good ideas that people should be using? Are some to be avoided?
Well, I wouldn't say anything is to be avoided. I personally feel everything is to be A/B tested, because what does or doesn't work for me is most likely not going to be your experience when you try. But I would definitely caution with whatever service or promotion that you do to make it be as narrow and on brand as possible. Because I do think it's a mistake. Let's say you write paranormal romance. If you're just in a generic romance promo and you get all these people that maybe don't care about your specific genre, much less your book, they're just downloading a whole bunch of freebies because they're on the page and they're on a high from free books. That's not a qualified lead. So I do think they're all very powerful. They can be to get people on your list, but you're also going to be skewed toward people inherently that haven't heard of you before. They're not going to be as strong of a fan as the people that come organically. So it can be good. And again, data nerd, I know how many people have come from different sources on my list. And there are definitely super fans that have come from promos that I've done, whether it was through a group of authors with BookFunnel or through InstaFreebie. But also there have been a higher percentage of perhaps of people who end up unsubscribing or whatever from those as well. So just be aware.
And they are people who want a book for free as well. So you are going to get, although you've ended up with super fans from there, you should be also doing something.
We're a little bit off topic, but I believe in perma-free and doing like book bubs and things like that. So yeah, those people are people that are getting a book for free or 99 cents, but that doesn't mean they're unwilling to pay for other books. They just want to try before they buy, and I can understand that. So
okay, Erica, we've made John stand up long enough holding that iPhone, and the camera's all still working at the moment, and we are all about to melt in here. It's been brilliant. Thank you so much indeed for talking to us. We probably could have filled another 40 minutes or so with this, and I'm sure we'll talk further in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Good, there she is, Erica Ridley. And we were sat in John Dyer's bungalow to record that. He has a bungalow there because he's getting on a bit, and I think the stairs in a two-level apartment was a bit much for him. So,
Poor John.
Poor John. No, it was great to meet Erica, a very impressive person. And it's one of the great things about, if I may say this for a moment, about the indie space is I would think probably more so than traditional publishing. I might be wrong, but some of the very senior people like Kinga Genetics, who we talked about earlier, CEO of Publish Drive. You've got Erica Ridley. You've got very impressive men and women on both sides. Feels very new, very equally split. Maybe a change from where we were a few years ago, that area. But newsletters. I mean, Mark, you seems to come naturally to you. Filling your emails with new. I mean, I'm on your list, so I see everything you've got to say, but a reasonable amount of planning goes into it as well.
Don't credit me with too much planning. I sent one out on Friday and I almost forgot, so I was like, I've got to do an email today, and so I did it in 5 minutes, just dictated it. And after speaking to Tammy Lebrec, who's another person who's very good on newsletters, who we'll definitely get on the podcast at some point. She's done something for the self-publishing Formula University, not a university, which is well worth having a look at. Also, if you're a Patron subscriber, you can get that for look at that right now if you want to. She gave me a kick up the arse when it comes to actually doing my newsletter more often. So one of the things I've been doing this year, well, for the last 2 or 3 months, is putting one of my titles on a KDP countdown, Kindle Unlimited. Sorry, not Kindle Unlimited, Kindle. What am I on about today? Right. Select countdown deal. Yeah, I'm losing it. A countdown deal, basically, what I do one every 2 weeks, and we'll email out and say something about the book that's on deal, and maybe a bit of other news as well. And I did this one on Friday for my first ever self-published book, The Black Mile, and sold 1,200 copies. Wow. In 12 hours or so, and because that was it was down to 99 cents and 99 pence, and you get 70% of that on a countdown deal. So made about £1,000 just by sending an email out, which is kind of have to catch yourself sometimes that it's possible to do that. So yeah, that's all really. I wouldn't normally before that have been emailing my list quite as much as I have been. But just speaking to Tammy makes me realise that I was missing a trick there, and it's been something that fans, they like it. They're on the list because they want to hear from me, and they'll be on your list because they want to hear from you. And I think it's also important to just remind yourself that for these readers, you may well be their favourite author, and to get an email in their inbox from their favourite author might well be the highlight of that person's day. So there's no reason to be worried about sending those kinds of things out. If you think about it as you're actually doing them a favour and giving them some useful content, it's just kind of shift your understanding a bit.
Yeah, and it's a little while since we recorded the interview with Erica, and I didn't listen to it before we did this, but I will listen to it immediately afterwards to remind myself. But I can't remember exactly what we covered, but I think that's a very important point. Is you do sense from the tone of some people they feel almost apologetic for sending out an email, and that's not the tone to have. And you should be focused in your mind. The persona you're emailing is the person who wants to be on your list and wants to hear from you. Aim your emails at them. And if people don't want to be on your list and don't want to hear from you, don't moderate yourself for them, because they're going to leave anyway, and there's no point in having them there. And there's someone posted into the group, I think this morning or late last night, saying, does anybody else feel down when people leave my list?
That.
And I think the answer to that is no, you shouldn't feel down when people leave your list. You should feel pleased.
I did when I started, and you will when you start getting unsubscribes. It's just natural. I don't even check now. I mean, I looked. Mailchimp. I still use Mailchimp, and they'll send me a daily update saying, how many have subscribed and unsubscribed. When one of those emails goes out on a Friday, I'll probably have 150 unsubscribes. Which, if you think about it, it's like 150 people hate my guts. Of course, that isn't why they've unsubscribed. It could be any number of reasons why that is. But it doesn't bother me. I hardly notice these days. So it isn't something that you need to worry about. It's just, you don't really want them on your list. If they don't want to be there, you're paying for them to be there. So it makes much more sense for them to go. And then, of course, your open rates, your engagement is likely to increase when, I hate to call people like that deadwood, but it's kind of what they are. So just cut the deadwood out and concentrate on the ones who want to be there.
Yeah, and we are deadwood on other lists. I unsubscribe from lists quite regularly. In fact, it makes me laugh every time I unsubscribe. I unsubscribed from one this morning at how much time and effort and sweat we put into GDPR and how widely ignored it is by almost everybody in the world.
Yes, I know. That was another false dawn, wasn't it?
It really was. It was a Y2K.
So I've unsubscribed recently. A lot of authors, naughty authors, don't do this, have been adding me to their lists without asking. Yeah. And that's not a good idea, because I will unsubscribe and I will say, I wasn't added to this list, which is not good for your sending reputation with your EMS. So don't do things like that. It's a bit silly. Yeah. Anyway, here endeth the lesson. And I'm in a good mood today, really. So.
There's a well-known English online entrepreneur. I'll hesitate to name him for this, but on his landing page, he has a.
Is it JB? JP?
Yeah, it is. And he has
He's not that well known. But.
Well, he has an opt-in box for his mailing list, and you can't go forward without ticking it. And it looks like it's an error. If you untick it, it looks like the screen goes into an error and you can no longer press collect. But the whole point of that opt-in was it made it a voluntary thing to join your list if you're going to have that. But if you want to go to his webinar, you've got to join his list, which is exactly what GDPR said is what you shouldn't be doing.
Yes, absolutely. Good.
Anyway, there you go. Good. And on the emails, we should say we did have a little blip ourselves for those of you on our list last week, because for some reason the email had a couple of erroneous links and banners in it, and we're not sure exactly where that happened, but it happens to the best of us at some point every now and again, and we're trying to make sure we keep the errors to an absolute minimum.
Well, we usually keep John locked up in the basement.
Yeah.
He must have escaped. Who knows?
I always liked Sky News when Sky News started, and the rolling news looked very different from the considered bulletins that we'd had for years and years, and their motto was not wrong for long. So if they're wrong, they corrected it quickly. Okay, good. Look, brilliant. I want to say thank you so much to Erica Ridley for sitting down with us in John's bungalow in Florida last year. It was a brilliant chat to have with you, Erica, and I hope your books go well. And we want to say thank you very much indeed for listening to the Self-Publishing Show. And Mark, you and I will be back here to talk next week. And who are we talking to next week? Can I preview this? I think it might be, I don't know. I'm not going to preview it because there's a state of flux at the moment in what's going on.
J.K. Rowling?
It's not, we haven't managed to bag J.K. yet. We would
Excuse me?
That's not an English euphemism. To get her in the bag. I'll stop there.
Jeez, goodness me, it's getting worse. All right, how about George R.R. Martin? Come on,
I would love to speak to George R.R. Martin, and if people have any contacts in these areas, they should work on our behalf and try and get them. So it would be great to have a proper sit down with these guys, a really big high profile writer. We'd love to do that. We should do that. 2019 is one of our resolutions. Enid Blyton, let's get her on.
Good luck with that. Yeah, we have a seance.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much indeed for listening. We will speak to you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishing show. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with the Self-Publishing Show.